In 2019, Israel turned on a gas platform so large it rivals two Empire State Buildings stacked on top of each other, sitting in the middle of the ocean, and almost nobody reported it. Within 3 years, that single structure flipped Israel from a country that imported almost all of its energy into one of the most powerful energy exporters in the entire Middle East. But the gas platform is actually the least impressive thing on this list, because right now, Israel is also building something underground that engineers said was physically impossible. And they are more than halfway done. Stay with me, because this one gets genuinely insane. Act 1. The Leviathan Platform. Let's start with the numbers, because they don't feel real. 10 kilometers off Israel's Mediterranean coast, buried 1,500 meters beneath the seafloor, Iyun sits a gas reservoir holding over 600 billion cubic meters of recoverable natural gas. To put that in perspective, that is enough to power Israel at full capacity for several decades, with enough left over to export billions of dollars worth every single year to neighboring countries. Getting to it was the first engineering problem. Teams from 25 different countries drilled 4 wells deep into the seabed, then laid twin 18-inch pipelines stretching 117 kilometers across the ocean floor to carry the raw gas back to shore. At the surface, they built the processing platform, a structure so massive it genuinely rivals 2 Empire State Buildings stacked end-to-end, sitting on steel legs anchored into the Mediterranean seafloor, running 24 hours a day in one of the world's most strategically volatile stretches of water. The first gas flowed on December 31, 2019. 3 years after the final investment decision. Industry insiders called it one of the fastest offshore completions of its scale anywhere in the world. And then came the part that stunned everyone. Nearly 90% of Leviathan's output doesn't stay in Israel. It flows by pipeline directly to Egypt and Jordan, Israel's neighbors, powering their factories, their homes, and their national grids. A country that once couldn't supply its own energy needs is now the energy supplier for an entire region. Annual revenues from gas exports alone now approach $3 billion a year. That is not a small infrastructure project. That is a complete economic transformation in under a decade. But here is the thing. As remarkable as Leviathan is, the project I am about to show you next makes it look straightforward by comparison, because Israel is not just building above the ground and under the ocean. They are doing something that has never been attempted in this region in all of human history, and the engineering challenge is almost hard to describe. Act 2. The Two Seas Project. The Dead Sea is dying, not slowly. Every single year it loses more than a meter of water depth. Hotels built on its shoreline decades ago now sit hundreds of meters from the water's edge. The Jordan River, its only real source, has been so heavily diverted for agriculture and drinking water that barely a trickle reaches the lake today. If the current trend continues, scientists estimate the Dead Sea could lose another third of its remaining volume within a generation. Israel's answer to this was to attempt something that no country had ever tried, a project called the Red Sea-Dead Sea Conveyance, the Two Seas Project. The idea: build a 180-kilometer tunnel cutting through desert valleys and rocky plateaus, pumping 200 million cubic meters of seawater per year from the Gulf of Aqaba all the way up to the Dead Sea. Along the route, the dramatic drop in elevation would spin turbines generating up to 150 megawatts of hydroelectric power. At the midpoint, a desalination plant would strip the salt out of part of the water, producing fresh drinking water for Israel, Jordan, and the Palestinian territories, while the remaining brine continues north to stabilize the dying lake. 3 countries, 1 tunnel, one of the most complex multi-purpose engineering systems ever designed in the Middle East. The budget started at $3 billion and climbed toward $5 billion as tunneling delays and legal battles stacked up. Lawsuits from Bedouin communities forced an 11-kilometer reroute that added nearly $500 million alone. Environmental scientists raised alarms about chemical reactions between Red Sea and Dead Sea water. The two bodies have completely different mineral compositions, and nobody could fully predict what happens when they mix at scale. Today, the project stands at 45% complete. Controversial, expensive, and genuinely unprecedented. Now, if you think building a 180-kilometer tunnel through a desert is ambitious, Wait until you see what Israel is simultaneously doing on the surface, because they are in the middle of the largest land infrastructure project in the country's history, and they are doing it at a speed that is causing legal chaos. Act 3. High-speed rail, 600 kilometers of electrified high-speed rail. That is the scale of what Israel is currently building across the country, connecting Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, Haifa, and Beersheba in a single integrated network. Trains running at 200 kilometers per hour, cutting travel times between the country's major cities by nearly half. The $6 billion project is built on a public-private partnership, an Israeli, French, and Chinese consortium, with debt and equity split 70-30, and a 25-year contract covering 6 years of construction and 19 years of operation. As of late 2025, earthworks are 70% complete. But here is where it gets complicated. Over 110 land parcels have been seized under eminent domain to make way for the tracks. Bedouin families, farming communities, and environmental groups have all filed lawsuits. One injunction forced a costly reroute near the Sharon region, adding $220 million to the budget and nearly a full year of delays. The courtroom battles are still ongoing even as the bulldozers keep moving. Israel is building one of the most ambitious rail networks in the Middle East, while simultaneously fighting legal battles over almost every kilometer of it. And all of it, the gas revenues, the water infrastructure, the rail network, is feeding into something most people haven't noticed yet. Israel is using this moment to completely rebuild its industrial and trade infrastructure from the ground up, and the numbers coming out of that build-out are staggering. Act 4. Industrial Build-Out. $4 billion has gone into a petrochemicals cluster producing 1 million tons of polyolefins every year, the raw material for medical equipment, automotive parts, and consumer packaging. The competitive advantage is direct. Natural gas piped straight from Leviathan and Tamar gives Ashkelon a feedstock cost that European and Gulf competitors simply cannot match. Annual export revenues are forecast to hit $2 billion, with shipments going to Asia, Africa, and the EU. The cluster has created 10,000 skilled jobs in a sector that barely existed in Israel a decade ago. At Haifa Port, the main channel has been dredged to minus 17 meters, deep enough for the world's largest LNG carriers, and a new real-time IoT logistics system tracking every vessel, crane, and cargo unit cut average turnaround times by 30%. At Ben Gurion Airport, the expanded Terminal 2 adds 5 million passengers of annual capacity, with cargo infrastructure now built for LNG-capable handling. Israel is not just producing energy and water, it is rebuilding every gateway in and out of the country to handle a completely different scale of trade. So step back and look at all of it together. A gas platform producing 25 billion cubic meters a year that turned Israel into a regional energy supplier. A 180-kilometer tunnel project connecting two seas that has never been attempted before. 600 kilometers of high-speed rail under construction, while lawsuits pile up in real time. A petrochemicals industry generating $2 billion in exports from a feedstock that didn't exist 20 years ago. Ports and airports rebuilt to handle the scale of a completely transformed economy. This is not one project. This is a country that looked at its geography, its resources, and its constraints, and decided to redesign all of it simultaneously. The risks are real. Environmental concerns around the gas platforms are legitimate. The 2Cs project could still face chemical problems no simulation fully predicted. The rail project has years of legal battles left to run. None of that is small, but here is what the data already shows. Israel went from energy importer to energy exporter in under a decade. It is building water infrastructure for 3 countries at once. It is laying 600 kilometers of high-speed rail through one of the world's most legally and politically complex landscapes. A country the size of New Jersey, building at the scale of a continent. So here's the question I want to leave you with. Drop it in the comments. Of all these projects, which one do you think will have the biggest impact on the region in the next 20 years? The gas exports, the water tunnel, the rail network, or something else entirely? Because I genuinely want to know what you think.